Hey folks, thanks for stopping by. This week I'm going to be showing you how I apply milk paint to a couple of utility bowls. Stick around, we'll get started. Well, if you watch the last couple of bowl videos I've made, you'll recognize these three bowls. We've got one in walnut, one in sweet gum, and one in, I think it's ash. And they don't have any finish. So typically what I want to do is put finish or milk paint on the outside and then a utility finish like either mineral oil or just paste wax on the inside. These are meant to be, you know, fruit bowls or like for example, I can remember my grandma had a bowl, a wooden bowl that she used to use when she was shucking green beans. And you know, she'd lay a towel in the bowl and one bowl and then have another bowl for the strings and the cast-offs. So it really is a utility bowl. It's meant to be used, and that's why these are also, you know, rather thick. They're meant to be knocked around. Not that many people are going to be stringing their own green beans, but there's always use for a utility bowl. So as far as the paints, if you're doing this for production turning and you're looking to save every penny, by all means go with the powder. It's much cheaper than the pre-mixed paints like you'll get at, let's say, Michael's. But it's also a bit more work. You have to heat up the water. You want to use warm water. You have to mix it and mix it and mix it, and you're still going to end up with grainy lumps. It's not fun. It's work. But you know, if you want to save a little bit of money, sure. But I've had these for quite a while, and it doesn't take very much paint at all. So I'm going to be basically only painting this section. I'm not going to bother with the bottom because the one thing about milk paint is that it does rub off. You know, when you use it, you will get the paint coming off and chipping off and showing the wood underneath. So we're going to take advantage of that by doing 2 coats of paint in contrasting colors. So if you look at old pieces of furniture that had milk paint, you'll often see in the cracks and crevices versus the outer portion, that's 2 different paints. And that's kind of the effect that we're going for here. So I've picked these 2 colors. This will be the highlight, the base color, and this will be the top coat. This is a very traditional combination, like red, and then later on it happened to be painted black. And then I've got one here that is a gold color with a green over top. So let me get everything mixed up, shaken up, and we'll get started. I'm just going to be using a foam brush as an applicator. You don't have to use your nice brushes on this. You do have to be a bit careful. Milk paint will stain the inside, so be very careful about how you hold the bowl, how you paint it. I would go off the edge. Don't go like this because you'll end up getting it on the edge here, and you end up, there's no real way to get it off except for sanding it, and then you're left with a divot in the rim. So there is a little bit of care need to be taken. But otherwise, let me grab some paint and get started.
Two 2,000 years later.
So let me let that dry. I'll give it about an hour. This one is more or less dry, but if you tried to put another coat on, it would kind of pull the other coat up. Let it dry, and I'll come back and we'll put a second coat on, and then we'll talk about what we do to make it look cool. So I'll be back in about an hour.
6.5 hours later.
Let me clean up and give those about another hour to dry, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the top coat.
3:28 a.m.
Okay. So now, let me start putting on the top coat.
Three weeks later.
Okay, looks like that one is definitely going to take 2 coats. Seems to be fairly smooth in application, but it's not a little bit thin in places, so we'll see. Let me clean up my brush and let this all dry, and I'll be back in another hour.
Eventually.
Okay, I think one more coat will do for that one, and we'll see about that one.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
I'm going to let these dry for about an hour and come back and see where we're at. Hopefully this will be it and we can get to the fun part. Okay, at least I've had some time to dry, and I think we're ready for the fun part. Well, first let me clean up the bottoms and get rid of paint that kind of went over the edge with just some sandpaper. Good job. So the fun part is that milk paint is soft if you don't put a top coat on it. And what you can do is paint something 2 different colors and then use sandpaper, a knife, a bit of steel wool, anything to scratch it or scrape it and expose the paint under it. That's why I tried to choose complementary colors for the base coat and then the top coat. So let me see. Particularly, you want to find the areas where where you would normally use it, where you always pick it up and hold it like this. Well, it's likely to be where your fingers are here. I'll make sure you guys can see that. So doing things like taking a piece of sandpaper and making some small scratches where your fingers would go to expose, as you can see it, the paint under. I mean, if you pick up one of these old bowls in an antique shop that's been used, for shucking beans for 30 years in somebody's grandma's kitchen, you'll see that for whatever reason it gets worn in certain places more than others, and what you're trying to do is duplicate that kind of thing. So something like that will work. A lot of times, you'll have a bowl that you put up next to another bowl, and because of that, you get scratches and cuts in the paint. So if you take a sharp object and make some scratches, and then use a little bit of sandpaper to kind of open that up a little bit and expose it. And that's also why I didn't worry about lines, brush marks, when I was doing the bottom coats, because if you lightly go over the top coat, it will take the top coat off and expose the lines in the bottom coat. If I just lightly do this, you'll start to see any lines in the bottom coat, especially in the places where the paint's a little bit thinner. Another place is right around the edge, the bottom edge. It's a great place to do it. So you can see the bottom color shows through in quite a few different places. There. Scratches. Let's see, what else can we do? And you can go the whole route of distressing. You know, take a hammer and ding it, make some dents. Not a great fan of that, but there's all kinds of distressing techniques that you can use to give these bowls a little bit of character. Okay. Let me take this first ball as an example. Once you've got that done, one of the things you can do is take a piece of brown cardboard, brown paper like out of a shopping bag, and buff it. You notice it doesn't. This particular brand of milk paint doesn't have a really nice sheen. You can burnish it with a piece of brown paper, and it will take some of it off, but it also kind of levels the surface out before you put wax on it. I found that burnishing it does help the paint retention, as well as giving it a little bit of a sheen before you start waxing it. Okay. So let me do the same to the other two bowls, and I'll be back.
Six and a half hours later.
Okay. That's pretty good. Now you notice that even though it's dry, you can still generate dust by just touching these things. So you got to put a top coat on it. For the outside, I recommend just a furniture paste wax. Let me go get my wax. And the other thing about paste wax is that it will affect the color of the milk paint. At least I know it will this. I'm not sure about this. This actually has a shine to it that makes me think it's not going to affect it very much. Let me grab a towel. You could also use a like a mineral oil and beeswax finish, and that would be food safe. You know, for the inside. For the outside, I'm just putting on a liberal coat of furniture paste wax. Sorry about wax is a little cold and it's hard to get a good amount of it out. And yes, you'll notice it does take some off. Even if you didn't do the distressing, when you went to wax it, it would take some of it off. Tell you what, I'm not going to watch you guys, or have you guys watch me paste wax a bunch of bowls. So let me go ahead and get that done, and then I'll come back once they've, I've got them all covered, and they've had a chance for the wax to harden. So back in a bit.
One eternity later.
Okay, so this will had about an hour to dry. So next thing you do is buff off the excess wax and reveal the shine. Shows up well. There you go. You can see the shine.
Three days later.
All right. And I believe that is that. So, as you can see, it's a tactile finish. It's got a warmth that you really can't convey over camera. It's really nice, a nice feel to it. Yeah, and yeah, you could cover it with a clear lacquer, or there's other finishes you could put on top of it, but I like to do this since it's kind of traditional. I mean, wax over milk paint is pretty doggone traditional. So, like I said, for the insides, I'll probably do mineral oil and beeswax. I just don't have any cooked up at the moment, so I didn't have to put on these. But I think it turned out pretty well. This one, I'm pleased at the highlight colors showing through. This one, not so much, but you know, it's an experiment. It's for a utility bowl. It's perfectly fine. And the fact of the matter is, if I strip this off and put another color over top of it, it'll make it look even better. Just because it'll look more like a piece that's been handed down for generations. The black over red is traditional. You find a lot of old kitchenware that had red milk paint, and then at some point later it was either covered with either yellow or black. So that's pretty neat. So I believe that is that. I'll throw some pictures up at the end with some close-ups of this. I'm not sure how much of the color highlights come through on the camera. But if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. If it's your first time here, please be sure to hit subscribe, share, like, comment. Try to put out one of these about every week or so. So I'll see you next time. Take care.